All right, what's going on, beautiful people? For those viewing, for those listening, you are tuned into the Value Podcast, where valuable people attract people of value. Number one podcast for relationships in the world. In the world. Listen, my name is Jamel Jackson. I'm a relationship mechanic. I focus on repairing, evaluating, and giving you the tools you need to maintain healthy relationships. Today, I have Listen, I'm honored to call this dude my bro. He's a therapist. He's a counselor. He's a husband. He's a amazing man of God. I mean that sincerely. He's a guy that knows how to get inside of the situation, whatever relationship situation you're facing. He does have specialties, but he works from the inside out, and that's what I admire about him. He's not just trying to put some paint on the problem. He's gonna really get inside, figure out what's the solution, and address that thing, man. Joe Civ Wilson. Is there anything you want to say, man? Oh, also, my bad, man. See, this is why I do the introductions and I mess him up. He's the founder. He's the founder of Love Unscripted, man. Love Unscripted. But Joe, is there anything you want to say? Because I sometimes, like I told you, I introduce people and it's like, man, Jamel, you messed it up, man.
No, you know how I do. Like I'm not big on the bios and intros. My name is Joseph. He said everything pretty much. I have a podcast where we just have unscripted conversations with millennials about relationships and dating. I believe that there's power in the conversations, and that if we have enough conversations, we can get the tools we need to be successful in relationships. So I'm just excited to be here with Jamil and have this conversation.
Oh man, and the conversation we are going to have, y'all. Listen, man. When I say the relationship mechanic, I'm bringing you the tools you need. So if you're listening, if you're watching, take notes because you're going to get tools. And today we're talking about the power of forgiveness. The power of forgiveness. Joseph, do you believe that an unforgiving heart prolongs the healing process? Meaning a person that's like, you know what, I'm not forgiving. I understand what happened, but this is the way I am. And they hurt me so bad, whoever it was in this relationship, and I'm not forgiving. Do you believe it's going to prolong their healing process?
That's a funny statement. Here's why, because it's catchy, but it's not necessarily true. Here's why. Because healing can, let's say someone dies and you never have a chance to actually go through a forgiveness process. That does not necessarily mean that your healing is somehow negated. Healing is what I believe is 100% based on your ability to figure out what it was about a situation that did not sit right with you and your own personal growth and development away from that situation. For me to say that I have to have forgiveness before I can heal, those two things don't always happen simultaneously and don't even happen at the same time. But you can start to heal before you get to that point of forgiveness. And there's no research that says that you have to forgive in order to start that healing process or to come to a place where you're even ready to forgive. So it sounds catchy, but the two aren't necessarily, they don't happen simultaneously all the time.
Now, I understand they don't happen simultaneously. However, do you believe that you need one in order for the other to start? Like, do you believe you need the forgiveness? Now, I understand the scenario you painted with somebody passing away. That's a huge example. But for somebody that's in a relationship or something has occurred and now they're out of the relationship and they've been hurt and they want to proceed with healing, do you believe that forgiving portion is necessary before they proceed with the healing?
Not necessarily, because here's another thing that I see all the time. Forgiveness can sometimes be a big source of guilt for people. Like if the thought is I have to forgive somebody in order to heal myself, now I feel like more of the burden is still on me for the situation. And I don't know if we're going to talk about this, but this happens a lot in religious communities where you have to forgive somebody and then they're saying, okay, now go get better. That does not always sit right. It's like a guilt culture that is unhealthy. And like I said, it happens a lot in spiritual and religious communities where we have this, oh, you have to forgive in order to be forgiven. That whole dynamic it can be a power struggle for some people, especially if you feel like it's someone you're insubordinate to. So I definitely think that you can start a healing process without the forgiveness part, but what actually happens is you are more likely to forgive once you've started that healing process, because now it's not based on someone external to forgive. And like people always say, healing is for you. And if it is for you, then it needs to start with you, not with an external or a mental expression that I am relieving somebody of a trespass against me. More so than I am healing within myself. And now, because I am starting to understand who I am, where I'm at mentally, now I can forgive you for what you did to me.
That's a great answer. I was having a conversation with somebody, and this was not a part of the podcast, but like I said, when we begin to flow, it's organic, and I believe I need to put this in there, where oftentimes you may hear people say, therapists, or even in sometimes spiritual communities, or just in communities talking about relationships in general, that wait until you're whole or completely healed to even engage or speak with somebody else, whether it be the man speaking to a woman or a woman speaking to a man. Wait until you're completely whole before you do that. Now, I made this comment that I disagree, because I gave the description of a broken vase, right? We're all going to be broken. That vase is broken. It can never be. Now, I believe God can bring you to a wholeness eventually. I believe that can happen. Now, outside of that, let's say that vase is broken and we put the best type of glue or whatever we use to put that vase back together, right? The vase is not actually whole. It's put back together. It looks beautiful, but it's broken. Now, I can still use that vase. I can put some beautiful flowers in it, some water, whatever the case may be. I personally believe in relationships that people come sometimes broken. They're not completely whole or healed, as some therapists or some religious leaders or people may say in this relationship spectrum. But when they come to you, I think it's all in how the person is handled when they're brought to you, just like that vase, because it's not completely whole. It's still broken. It's just been put together, and I can still utilize it. So I want to hear your insight on that, because I was having this conversation.
I completely agree with you. There is no such thing as being 100% whole. We can always be growing to a more perfect and more complete version of ourselves. But what does it mean to be whole? Like, it's really a bar that no one can reach. Are you saying that when you say I am whole, that I no longer have any flaws, that my past no longer hinder some of my ability to make decisions in the future? Is that what we're saying? And I don't believe people have to be completely healed or completely whole before they start dating. If that's the case, nobody should ever get in a relationship, because there's always something, no matter how big or small, that we're working to grow past, or someone we're trying to grow into. So I don't believe that you have to have it all together. And that's what's tripping up a lot of people. We have this perfectionist mentality around dating, where you have to have, like, if you're, for guys, you have to have money, you have to have a career, you have to have a house, you have to have all this stuff before you can become a husband. That's not necessarily true. You have to be wife material. You have to do this, you have to do that before you can even get out into there in the dating world, which isn't true. What actually happens is, when two people are working towards becoming more whole, you actually speed up that process. Like, it actually like hyper drives your ability to, one, see yourself in a different light, because now you can reflect off of somebody, and now you have safe support as you're growing past some of these things. If you wait and do it by yourself and wait to get to this idea of wholeness, then you're going to be waiting forever, and love is going to pass you by. Relationships are going to pass you by. Jobs and opportunities are going to pass you by, and life is going to pass you by.
Wow. I'm not going to mess with that no more, because I feel we will go down that rabbit hole, and we will stay in that rabbit hole. Why do you believe we stay connected to relationships that don't allow us to heal properly, or that don't accept our forgiveness? So we're in this relationship, something may have occurred, and we stay there, but we stay there, and this relationship is not allowing us to heal, or they don't accept our forgiveness. Why do you believe people stay in those situations?
One, they're comfortable. It can be comfortable to not have to change something, even if it's not working. Like we'll see people who, unfortunately, will drive with really bad tires on their car. Talking about mechanic, they'll drive with 2 bald tires on their car, even though it's not good for them, even though they spin out. But it's inconvenient sometimes to stop and get them repaired. To get off the road and fix them sometimes is more inconvenient than it's worth. Another thing, I think people confidence can be another one as far as the codependency thing. We have a lot, like there's a big issue with codependency in relationships. We hear a lot of people who are sticking it out and staying in relationships for a long time that are unhealthy. And it's not because they're trying to stick it out and they're really trying to persevere. It's because they have an unhealthy codependency. And even with the forgiveness part, when people don't accept our forgiveness, now there's a wedge between two people where you can't mend the relationship. If there's no forgiveness, especially in relationship, and it can be any kind, when that bridge can't be passed, we're forever on 2 separate sides. And if you're on 2 separate sides, we can no longer, like you say, walk. How can 2 walk together unless they agree? We can't agree to move past this situation. So how are we going to continue to grow as a couple? So those are 3 things that I see that happen.
Now, when you're talking about this unhealthy dependency, paint a picture for me. What does that look like for somebody that's viewing this or listening? Like, because I heard you kept using that term.
Yeah. So people will be in a relationship, and when they are have a deep down need that they're trying to meet through somebody who is either unhealthy for them or they manipulate and use their need against them. So someone may be caught in a situation where, let's say, I cannot financially leave, but because my partner knows I cannot financially leave, they use that over me to somewhat kind of rule over me and manipulate the situation. Or let's say one partner has abandonment issues and one person is really confident. The person who's really confident can use the person's abandonment issues to play on their emotions in order to keep them trapped in the relationship. And the person who's has the issue of I just forgot what abandonment issues, they stay because they have that need to be in connection with somebody. So those are just 2 examples of how, like, it can be emotional, but it can also be a physical codependency.
So a person's in this relationship from this unhealthy dependency picture that you painted, and I'm playing the person in this relationship because I hear this a lot when I'm talking to people. They won't forgive me, and this level of unforgiveness is being held over a person's head as a manipulative tool. Have you seen that with couples? Like, I've heard it where people are like, I love them, I love him, I love her. And yes, I did. This is going to get me into my next question. I did make a mistake, but they're holding this unforgiveness over my head as a manipulative tool to kind of like puppet me, almost like you described with the money scenario.
Yeah. And we call it, sometimes they keep raising the bar where they're like, okay, in order to earn my forgiveness, you got to change this way. And then they change and then they move it a little higher. Well, I'm not satisfied. You still did this. You still hurt me. So in order to get my forgiveness, you have to do this. That in itself is toxic. That's like, you either genuinely forgive and then allow the situation to grow past that, or you simply let them know you're not willing to forgive at this time and you still have some healing and some things that you need to happen in order to get forgiveness. That is a very unhealthy and very dangerous thing. But I see how people can do it when you're hurt. Because part of it is, I want someone to really work to prove that they are sorry. But there's nothing that someone can do to actually prove they're sorry, because people are people. And if they revert back, people can fake it a long time. But what you want is a genuine apology where it's heartfelt. They express what they did. They take accountability for what they did, and they let you know that they're not going to do that thing again. And you have to, here's where kind of trust and faith comes in. You got to just trust and hope that they're not going to do that thing again. And if they do, decide how are you going to operate in relationship to them after that point.
I was in a position like that. My story, and God literally had to deal with me because when that situation occurred with me in my own personal relationship world, I was constantly every day waiting for my apology. I'm talking about I was counting down the seconds, the minutes, the hours, the days, the weeks. Like, look, I want my apology. Like I understand how this forgiveness thing is working, but I'm looking for an apology. Like I truly forgave the person, but I'm still, after I forgave them, I'm looking for my apology. And God had to deal with me, said, Jamel, true forgiveness does not look for an apology. That was a hard pill to swallow. Because think about it, when we forgive, it's kind of innately in our nature to be apology coming right after that. But when it doesn't come, that could like hit hard when you're waiting for the apology. But it takes maturity to know that, listen, true forgiveness does not look for an apology. Because what if that apology never comes? This is what God dealt with me personally. He said, Jamel, what if that apology never comes? Are you okay with that? And I was like, oh, no, not really. But he said, and that's when he dropped it on me, like, that means you haven't truly forgiven. Because true forgiveness in any relationship scenario is not looking for an apology. It just forgives, because it's letting that person go. It's letting them off the, and it's getting you off the hook from having to worry about it every night. I said this in my book. I'm gonna read it now. I said, when you're wounded, it's a very vulnerable stage. Sometimes it looks ugly, scary. It may cause others not to want to be close or offer help. Offer help. People that offer help that are not equipped. No, that's not what I want to say. Part, excuse me. What I wanted to say. You know what? Forget it, bro. I lost track
No,
of what I
it's
was gonna
cool.
say.
And what I was gonna say is like there are a lot of things with forgiveness that would be ideal. Like it would be ideal for someone to give us an apology in order for us to forgive. It would be ideal if someone would admit guilt or admit what they did was wrong and how they never should have done that to you. That would be ideal, but it's not necessary. It's really not necessary. And if you hinge your forgiveness, like you said, on those things, now you would put yourself back in chains and are subjugated to whether or not they acknowledge what you want them to acknowledge. And the truth is that may never come. And
It
if
may
it
never
doesn't,
come.
now how do you free yourself? And like you said, I love the analogy of the letting go of whatever it was they did. That's exactly what it is. You got to take yourself out of the chains and then allow someone else to be free from the chains of their trespass against you. So there are a lot of things that we think would be ideal. They would be nice to have, but they're not
Yeah.
necessary.
That's what I meant. That true forgiveness, it's more so for you than it is for them. It frees you up from carrying around this bitterness, this hurt, this resentment, these unresolved issues. Because now you're trying to move in the relationship and you got a side eye, like, yeah, I love her, I love him, but I'm not giving them 100% all of me again until I get that apology. I'm not making her breakfast how I used to make it until I get that apology. I'm going to make it, but it's not getting the bells and the whistles. I'm going to give him some sex, but he's not getting that world-renowned, exceptional sex until I get that apology. And so we begin to move in then we start to manipulate the relationship, and then everything else starts to come out of that now. Because when you're manipulating something, now you're forcing something to be what it's not truly is.
Yeah. And that's what's funny. A lack of forgiveness in a relationship turns into cancer. Like there's two things that I say that dramatically like decrease your chances of having a successful relationship. And when they become in your relationship, the direction goes down fast. That's selfishness and unforgiveness. Those are two things you absolutely need in order to have healthy relationships. And when you allow unforgiveness to sit in, it builds resentment. You are literally, every day that you do not forgive your partner or your spouse, you are laying a brick. You are laying a brick and you're building a wall. But what forgiveness allows you to do is to knock down that wall and allow there to be communion, to be connection between the two of you. If you're, like you said, if I'm constantly thinking I'm not giving them all of this because I need that apology, that's just a little bit more poison into the relationship. And we know cancer spreads quick. Someone could have cancer one day and find out now it's all over their body. Like people like don't know how it spreads so fast. That's exactly how selfishness and unforgiveness is. And it starts to trickle into every direction of your relationship. Before you know it, you're like, how did I get to this point? But it started off with that small bit of, I'm not doing this unless I get an apology, or I'm not going to give my all back into this relationship until I get that apology. And it's poisoning and killing relationships.
Wow, man. The fact that you just said that, I'm in the marketplace and I push my book out there. And what's interesting is I say, hey, you guys, how you doing? Whether it's a group of ladies, group of men, or, a mixture. I got this amazing book, The Value of Relationships. And when that word comes out, relationships, man, you would be surprised, bro, how it triggers emotional hurt and damage within people. Because they'll say, some people, guys, nah, bro, I don't want nothing to do with that, bro. Women, nope, I'm done. And I'm like, hold on. I'm talking about all relationships, but just from hearing that word, and I believe not even just with me in the marketplace, but I believe the word relationships is connected to a lot of people's hurt and damage. And I believe a lot of it is from the unforgiveness, because if you truly forgave whatever that situation was, I'm not putting a time frame on people's forgiveness or healing. I'm just saying, but if you truly have forgiven, that means that word relationship should not trigger those deep, dark emotions of hurt and pain of whatever he, she, or they did to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that's happened in our society, where when you say relationships, you could just be having dinner and say, hey, man, let's talk about relationships. People are, I'm not, here we are. I don't want nothing. And so that unforgiveness is streaming into other areas of our lives. So what it's doing is it's forcing us now, not even forcing, well, it's having us now start to use all of these. And I know you'll be able to organically flow with this. All of these different type of coping mechanisms that are not even giving you true healing. So now I gotta go out every Wednesday or Thursday, or I have to have this particular type of drink, or now I'm in miscellaneous relationships, just having casual sex, even though, I'm just using that as an example. It may not be somebody's method, but we're using these different coping mechanisms. Do you find that like happening from that educational standpoint?
So here's the thing. And I always ask people, who taught you how to date? Like, who taught you how to be in a relationship with someone you're interested in, with people? A lot of times people will say, nobody taught me how to be a boyfriend, be a girlfriend, how to be a friend. Even with children, a lot of parents just teach kids skills such as share, be nice, not how to be dependable, how to be cooperative. And the same thing happens with forgiveness. People are not taught how to safely forgive. Like, I was not taught, my parents did not teach me, hey, when somebody does this against you, this is what the process of forgiveness looks like. So a lot of people go to that other extreme of trying to figure out things to feel that hurt until I feel like, okay, I'm over it. Not that I forgive, but now I'm past it. What do we say? Oh, I'm done with it. I'm over it. I'm not dealing with that no more. But it's still there. And I think one thing that people can really benefit from is learning actually how to forgive. And I'll just give a few steps on how to actually like practically forgive. So one is acknowledge that you're hurt, that someone did something to you, that the situation didn't go the way you wanted it to. Two, what is it that you need in order for yourself, not from the other person? What is it that you need to be able to move past this experience? It could be, I need to do more self-reflecting. I need some more boundaries around people. I need to have a better contract if I'm at work. Like, whatever it is, you got to start putting some other skills and parameters in place in order. What do you need to be able to move forward? And that last step is being able to say, I am freeing this person, this group, this business of the responsibility of being in my mind in a negative way, in a negative light. Those are three simple steps that you can do to actually try to get to forgiveness. And we're not taught any of those kind of things. We're just taught, oh man, you just gotta forgive and forget. Or we just say, man, you can't heal until you forgive. Now it's like, okay, well, gosh, okay, what does that look like though? But I think those three things can be very beneficial in starting your forgiveness journey. And that's one, acknowledging how you really feel about the situation. Two, determining and defining what it is you need in order to be able to move forward. And then three, relieving the people, situation, the group of the responsibility of having negative space in your heart and in your mind.
That's key, man, because when I went through my forgiveness, when I went through that process, I had to, it was an eye opener because I was using different coping mechanisms. One of my coping mechanisms became, I'll just worship harder.
Ooh.
I'll pray more. I'll go to more services. I'll get closer to God. I'll get closer to God than I've ever got to God. And we talked about this in my topic, the living with the memory, where God had to shatter that and say, Jamel, those are great things that you're doing, but they're just stepping stones to resolving the bigger issue. It wasn't until I really sat and was like, you know what? I'm not okay. I'm not okay with what happens. And then for men, that could be difficult. For if there's a man watching this or viewing this, watching this or listening, please listen to this part. As a man, I'm telling you, I had to get to a point and set my pride aside and say, you know what? I'm not okay with what happens. This actually hurts. First, with myself being honest, and then from there going to God and saying, God, you know what? First, I identified in myself, and then going to God and saying, God, I'm hurt. I don't like what happened. What do I need to do? And then that's when I begin to be shown that whole living with the memory, healing process, partnering your memory, and truly forgiving and not looking for an apology. Because if not, that resentment settles in, and the coping mechanism, some of our coping mechanisms could be, oh, I'm just going to do my, whatever your spiritual activity is. I'm going to do more of this. I'm going to do more yoga. And I'm not against this stuff that people are doing, but I'm telling you right now, it's not going to truly heal you until you be honest with yourself and say, I'm hurting.
Yeah, it's not a substitute. Definitely.
Because what happened is we'll start to use all these crazy coping. And here's one more powerful thing is your environment has to change. Your environment has to change, because I've seen people develop poor eating habits, start using all these type of coping mechanisms. Friends, especially if the group of friends you're in your ear and you say, yeah, this is what happened, and they're egging it or providing more fuel to the fire. I wouldn't forgive them either, girl, man. I wouldn't do that either, bro. All these girls are just the same. All these women the same. That's adding fuel to your unforgiveness to keep you to keep you tied to this harbor of unforgiveness. I like that you get tied to this harbor, anchored down, where your ship can never sail into your destiny. You're just anchored down, and you're just taking on all these passengers with bitterness and hurt and resentment. And since it's a big party going on, you think everything's okay, but the boat's not designed to sit in the harbor its whole entire life.
Right.
Some people, you may have to say, you know what? I'm trying to sail further and deeper into my destiny. So you guys are going to have to get off. I know we're having a good time. I know we're going out every Friday. I know we're doing this, but I'm hurt. And in order for me to heal properly, I need the proper people on my boat. I need the proper people in my life.
And it doesn't make you weak to be hurt. Like we have everyone has this whole bravado of having to be the man, having to be the woman, like not showing any type of emotion. It doesn't give anybody a one up on you because they hurt you. That's more a strike against their character, that they're willing to hurt people. That it has nothing to do with you. Like being hurt is something that everyone goes through, and it doesn't make you any less than. It doesn't make you weak. Acknowledging it doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you more human to acknowledge that, hey, I am hurt in this type of way. And acknowledging that in itself can be so healing, to admit that, hey, that situation does bother me, and I don't have to just blow past it like it never happened.
So here we go, Joe. What would you tell someone who has made a mistake or done something that by the world standards is irreparable? Because you have people, and I'm asking this question because I coach and I talk to people, and some people have done things, whatever that thing is that they have done, that mistake that they have made, and by the world standards, it's irreparable. So then it forces us into the coping mechanisms that are negative, or I'm just going to stay with this particular quorum of people because they all agree with my damage and they agree with my wound, and they understand that I'm bleeding, and they like the fact that I can just bleed all over the place, and they'll just help me keep cleaning it up, even though I'm going to start bleeding tomorrow. They'll just help me keep cleaning it up. So what would you tell somebody that made this mistake, but by the world standard, they're like, man, that's irreparable. You can't come out of that.
First of all, stop listening to the world, because the world changes every 5 to 10 minutes about what their standard is, what they value. So don't base whether or not something is forgivable based on what other people are saying, because everyone's different. Everyone is going to have their own viewpoint on it. But what's more important is if you feel like you've done something that is just beyond forgiveness, remember that everyone else has things that they've done that are just as bad. It's just not out there in the light. People just may not have found it. And it's still worth it to go through, even as someone who has done something, a healing process for yourself, taking accountability for what your role or responsibility may have been in the situation, and actually express your remorse, your own accountability, your forgiveness. And you'll be surprised how people who see genuine and authentic apologies and just willing to make amends, how that melts people's heart. And there have been some people who have, listen, as a therapist, I've seen some people do some things that we would say is unforgivable. But you would be surprised how when people are willing to be like, hey, I've done something wrong and I know I've done something wrong, but I am deeply sorry and I apologize for how I made you feel during that situation. I never should have put you in that, and I am sorry, and this is what I will do to make things right with you. Man, you'll be surprised how people's hearts melt and how relationships can be mended. I don't believe there's anything that's so far gone that it can't be mended. It only becomes to that point when there is a person who does not want to take responsibility for what they've done, do not want to acknowledge that they had a role or part in the situation, or they just flat out don't care. And I don't believe that everybody is like that. But if you are someone who feels like, man, I'm just bleeding out, hey, we all been there. We've all done stuff that is unforgivable to somebody. It's just who we're dealing with at the time. But if you're able to heal yourself, take accountability, because that is important, take responsibility for what you've done, but also be willing to make amends and to change whatever behavior was not acceptable to the person, to the family, to the business, you can find unity, you can find connection again.
Okay. Well, okay, here's what I learned, okay? This is through real life experience in a relationship. And I want to help somebody with this, and I want you to add on to it as well from your viewpoint, your perspective. I have come to the point that I don't believe, because here's what's pushed on us a lot too. You forgive them, and then you stay. Whether it's a intimate relationship, business, family, but let's talk intimate. Let's talk the husband, wife, the girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever that he or she did, or maybe you did to yourself, whatever happened, whatever that scenario was, you forgave. I don't believe you necessarily need to stay. I believe that's to the user's discretion, whether you should stay in that situation on whatever happened, because a lot of times from godly institutions or therapist perspective, it's, oh, that's what happened. Okay, let's get this thing. Let's make this. Now, like I said, I do believe in reconciliation and that things are repairable, but I don't believe always that just because you forgive that, oh, now we're supposed to be back together.
Right. You can forgive from a distance. You can love from a distance. I can still love you and not necessarily be in a relationship with you. Like, that's a real thing. And especially with forgiveness, you can really accept someone's apology and you can feel the remorse, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay. You have to judge whether or not you going forward, if your mental state is going to be in a healthy spot moving forward. Because there are things, especially like with betrayal and stuff like that, people can apologize for betraying you, but those are one of those things that cut deep for people, and people can choose not to deal with that anymore. Yes, I accept your apology. Yes, I forgive you. But no, we cannot continue on this journey together. That is completely acceptable. And nor would I ever push someone and force someone to stay in any type of relationship just because somebody apologized and acknowledged their wrongdoing. It's completely up to the person's discretion on how they would operate, because guess what? They have to live out the reality of that daily. And I would not put somebody in a worse mental state just because they forgave somebody than they were before it. That doesn't make sense to me, and it's not healthy, and that causes more problems down the road. So sometimes it is okay to have to divide and split if it means that one or both of the individuals will be better because there is separation.
Okay. Now I knew when we talked, and eventually it was gonna get thick. And it's getting thick. We're about to lay the extra layer on, because we're right in this particular vein that I wanted to be in. Because this, in our society, bro, this is pushed heavy. Like, once again, I want to make this disclaimer. I'm not telling people to separate, divide, divorce, don't stay with your girlfriend, don't stay with your boyfriend. I just believe that just because you do the forgiveness piece, even from a godly standpoint, in that realm, in that community, it's like you forgave. Now y'all need to work it out. God honors this. So we put the God honors this on there. And here's the thing. God does honor that, and God will move miraculously in a lot of couples scenarios. But I'm don't have to forgive and always stay, because I've seen people that they move forward based off of these suggestions that they've been given from godly men and women. And so they move forward. And I've talked to these couples one-on-one, and they're miserable. Or if I talk to them separately, they're miserable. They still love God. They're trying to honor God by staying in a situation that they know died a long time ago. But they're trying to, and they've done the forgiveness, legitimately apologized. And once again, for those that are viewing or listening, I am not, in no way am I castigating the church or the godly men and women that exist. That wisdom still provides reconciliation. But I just want to paint the picture of, it's not always a mandate or concrete that, oh, this is what God honors, and if you don't do this, then your marriage or your life and your destiny and your future is doomed, or it's not going to be great. Because that's sometimes the picture that's painted. So people stay in situations, they've done the forgiveness, but they stay there because they're like, oh man, if I leave, then God's not going to probably bless my next relationship, or he might not bless my business. So I'm just going to stay and stick it out. And I'm sticking it out, and I'm hurting, and I'm going through hell, and I'm bleeding, and I'm going to counseling, and I'm going to all these things, but you may not need to be there anymore.
Right. So let me jump in on that. Here's one thing that we know, and this is from research perspective. Yes. Religious and spiritual institutions are not the best and are not the most social, emotional. They don't have a lot of social emotional intelligence. So a lot of the spiritual communities deal with things in the metaphysical. Metaphysical cannot always be explained, and it's not always practical. And as a result, a lot of spiritual communities do not teach the skills that are needed for a lot of these situations. We say things like, God will honor this. Well, what does that practically look like? Like, okay, if he's going to honor it, how is he going to do that? Like, what is the day-to-day on a God will honor it? Well, you just got to trust and believe. I'm trusting and believing, but what does that practically look like? And it puts people in a situation where there's nothing I can do. When in reality, there's a lot you can do in a relationship to change your situation and circumstance. And like I said, I love spiritual communities. They definitely have their place, and they are extremely beneficial. But when it comes to relationships, when it comes to family, when you make it only metaphysical and spiritual, you take the humanity out of it, and you cannot practically do things to make your relationship better. And that's one of the challenges that I mentioned at the beginning, is like, there's a lot of things that spiritual communities say about forgiveness that does not have practical legs to be able to walk it out. What does that look like? And people are coming to these places because they want answers. They do want to be able to mend it. But if I get a metaphysical answer, trust and believe. What is it? He may not come when you want him, but he'll be there right on time. Joy comes in the morning. Well, what does any of that look like after I've been through all of this stuff? How do I walk that out? And I think what people are wanting are practical ways to be able to do these things. And I think, like you said, one option that often gets negated and tucked away is the option of leaving. That we think that in every relationship we have to stick to it, even if you're dating there, especially in spiritual community, God will honor it. This is building legs on your relationship for. No, I mean, I hear you. I understand it, but it's not always practical. And it, like you said, people are miserable all at the same time.
That, like, right here, if anything, that forgiveness piece, what they say, the terminology used, forgive and forget. You know, like, what does that mean to you, man?
It's another one of these sayings that sound good, but it's not practical in real life. Think about, like, how do you forget someone that really betrayed your trust? How do you just forget someone harming your children, someone harming you? Like, how do you just... We know that trauma can happen due to so many different reasons. And what we know about trauma is trauma actually changes your brain structure and chemistry. So much so that you can even be walking down the street, hear a sound, and we know military people will revert right back to being in war. Like, how do you forget stuff like that changes your brain chemistry? And to think that me relieving you of or relieving myself of being hurt or holding a grudge is going to make that all better and make me forget. Absolutely not. It's not biological. We know people still harbor trauma and different type of instances in their body. Like, we know unforgiveness lives, like, in the heart. People have heart conditions. People, high blood pressure. We know it's still there in your body. So just because you say forgive and forget, it sounds good. If we could forget, there's a lot of stuff we've been through. We wish we could forget them, but that's not the reality. What we have to do is be able to cope with these things after we have forgiven. There's still a process of going through your daily routine to make sure you can still be a functioning person past whatever happened. So, you know, I hear it sounds good, but it don't have any legs.
That's interesting. What I just saw this image, right? You got two broken people coming together, whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, husband and wife coming together. What is one coping mechanism you would give for a man? Because at the same time, they're together. He's trying to cope with whatever he dealt with in life. She's trying to cope with whatever she dealt with in life. It doesn't make them two bad people that are together. They're just broken people that are focused on healing while they're growing together. That could be just that picture alone is like, what the heck is going on? But what would you say to that man that's trying to cope, but then at the same time cover his spouse? Because he's coping, he's coping and covering at the same time.
Yeah. And like they say on the planes, put your life vest and your air mask on first. Yes, it's important to cover, but you cannot cover if you don't have your air mask on. You're going to faint before you're able to still support and uphold your partner. Like, you will burn out helping somebody else before you even get to the point where you can support yourself. So it sounds good. Yes, it's our role and responsibility as husband and men to cover our wives and our girlfriends and to protect them, but we still have to work on us first. Because from the position that we are getting what we need emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we can also help and cover somebody else. Like, that's a real thing. And one of the things that I'll say with men, and man, Jamel, this has really just completely changed my relationship, even though I'm 7 years in. One of the things to start addressing is what we'll call somatic responses. That's the responses to stress that you feel in your body. So for
somatic responses.
Yes. So I have started doing yoga as a way to get my nerves, my anxiety, the tension that I have in my body down so that I can be present for conversations, for those really, those really deep situations where we're having to talk and make decisions and having to understand each other. A lot of men are so wound up from working, from the responsibility of having to fix the situation, so to speak, just all the pressures of being a man. There's a lot of stuff going on in our body that we don't realize, that we're not able to be there for the conversation. So once I was able, this is amazing. Once I was able to get my body under control, I was able to sit through tough conversations with my wife and be more present, rather than my body and my mind racing while we're having the conversation. My body and my mind like heart pumping overly fast, and I can't think. So that's one thing I want to offer to men. Like, your body is going through something through all these conversations. Figure out what you can do, whether it's going for a walk first, whether it's exercising. Do something. Meditation does really good. If you pray, I will say pray, but pray in a way that is not pressureful. I don't need you doing them prostrate super 5-hour prayers. I need you to do something that is encouraging, uplifting, and that helps bring you to a calmer state. Those things allow men to be more present for these really tough conversations that you need to have, and it allows you to be there to be able to support, cover, and uplift your wife at the same time.
That's amazing, man. That is amazing. Now, I know there's a woman watching this or listening. Now, what would that look like for a woman? Because, as men, we're a little more, women are more emotional, So how would that look for a woman? She's coping. Not to say that she's damaged, because people may hear the word coping and say, oh, man, you might as well. Because the big thing now is, if you're coping, don't even be in a relationship. Waiting, like we said in the beginning of this message, wait until you're completely whole. We're not even going to go down that lane again. But this woman is coping, and she's trying to cover her man at the same time, because he's coping and trying to cover. Now she's coping and trying to cover him. And, she's more emotional. So how would that be for her?
So it's literally the same kind of process, where it starts with you first. And I think for women, since they are more likely to articulate what it is they want to say, be more mindful. And I'm not saying you're not being mindful. When I say mindful, is being more self-aware of where you're feeling things in your body, and speaking from a place of, how do I want to say it? Speaking from a place that is true to what your need is, and not necessarily the situation. So when you're coming to a situation, when you're talking with somebody, you can talk from a place of, this is how I'm impacted by it, because you have the words. This is how I'm impacted by it, and this is also what I'm needing. And even with the support parts, trying to support and cover your partner, if you're going to try to support them, it's really big to see what is it that, like, how does support look to them? And that's for men and women. We can support somebody all we want in our own method, but hearing them as far as, hey, I need 10 minutes before we have this conversation. Hey, can we hold hands while we have this conversation? Hey, do you mind if we get something to drink? I need a timeout during this conversation. Whatever it is, supporting them in that way is going to dramatically improve the quality and the interaction. So women are able to say what they're feeling a lot more, but it's also directed. Get it really fine-tuned. Even if you don't have it fine-tuned, just being specific about what it is that you're feeling, it touches people. It touches people. And for guys, if you're unsure of how to verbalize what it is, write it down if you need to. You don't I always encourage, you don't have to say everything right there in that situation. You can take time to write it down and come back and say it. But figure out a way to say, to verbalize, to express what it is that you're needing, that you're wanting in this situation. And I think that's how both people can help each other.
Wow, bro. This has been so powerful, especially the tail end of this message where we're talking about coping and covering, because what I believe is happening is people are trying to cover before they cope. And it's almost like you said with the plane scenario, which we've all heard the analogy, like, it's put your mask on and everything first. It's not cover the person next to you, then put your mask on. So I think in relationships and this is helping me as well, I think what we're doing is sometimes we can find ourselves trying to cover the person because we see them coping, and we're like, oh, I want to cover them because I see where they're hurting and I see where they're trying to get healed, and I want to cover them, especially the men, especially from the men, because we want to save everything. So we like, oh, let me cover it, but then it puts our coping on delay.
There's so much that
now the woman is trying to cope and cover us, and our coping has been delayed, so that delay has actually increased the brokenness. Listen, man,
there's
listen.
a lot in that. There's a lot, and I'm gonna just say this one little line. So,
okay,
a lot of people can use this idea of covering as a way to not deal with their own stuff, and that's why I always say, no matter if it's who's in the relationship, deal with you first before you go deal with somebody else. Like, even in a marriage, it is okay to focus on you first and only you at the time, so that you could be at a point in a place to where when y'all have these conversations, you have skills, you have strategies, you set up boundaries to be able to have healthy dialogue about extremely complex and stressful things. But if I'm only covering you, and if I was helping her do this, well, what did you do about you? Oh no, man, I'm just being the priest of the home, man. You know what the priest do. But you did not deal with your stuff. There's still a level of personal accountability you got to have in order to go through that process of learning how to cope with your own emotions, your own thoughts, and all of that during those situations. So it's deep. Like, we can talk a whole nother one on what's behind you feeling you have to cover people. That you have to jump in and save people. It's the strong friend mentality. It's the strong black woman. Like, it's like a lot of these titles, a lot of them can be packaged in, okay, I'm helping you, so sometimes I don't have to deal with my own stuff. So that's a whole thing for a whole nother day.
And it will be on another. It's going to happen, because I want. I gotta say this, and I'm telling you, this is it. And I'm gonna make this message and this close it. Not only are we trying to cover them, but then if that's our mentality, we're trying to cover everybody else. Our personal, I'm trying to cover mama because I know my mama trying to cope with this, and my daddy, and I'm trying to cover my niece because she just experienced this, and I'm trying to cover my coworker because they just told me this yesterday, and now I've been covering so many people. I come home, it's time to cover my spouse, and I have no more covering left. But we gonna unravel that. Joseph, you already know I'm gonna hit you up.
Listen, yeah, we gotta do that one. I want to do that one. That's good. Yeah.
So listen, man, from my personal experience, I want to say this. I would encourage you, the listener or the viewer, to surround yourself with individuals who are producers of life, faith, joy, patience, peace, gentleness, endurance, and most of all, love. After all, you are so close. When some people are in this position of healing to be made whole, your breakthrough is directly connected to what you allow to enter and exit your life. Most importantly, for those that are listening and viewing, I need you to know that God loves you. And no matter how infectious the wound may look or feel, he still loves you. You're still under his canopy of grace and mercy. Listen, I'm Jamel Jackson, your relationship mechanic. I focus on repairing, evaluating, and giving you the tools you need to maintain healthy relationships. Man, I had Love Unscripted on here. Joseph, for those that are listening, where could they find you at, man?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at love.unscripted. You can follow my YouTube channel, Love Unscripted HD. And you can listen to the Love Unscripted podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher Podcasts on all those streaming platforms. So that's where you can find me.
Appreciate it, man. We out of here. Peace.